Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here, and we are so excited to share the results of our Teachers Make the Difference, our pre-K project. This has been a labor of love and a long time in the making, although not too long. It feels like just yesterday, but we're now in our second year of our work with this wonderful program. So the first thing that I want to do is actually thank our donors, the Brown Foundation, the William Stamps Parish Fund, and the Houston Livestock and Rodeo. They were supportive of this idea. We all know the importance of early childhood, and nationally it's getting certainly a lot of emphasis and a lot of press. But our question was, what does it need to look like? Early childhood, we know that's going to improve their outcomes, but what are those specific pieces and parts that are critical in terms of long-term success? So we had this great idea. We turned to them. They were so supportive of us, asked great questions. And one thing, and I did tell Mr. Lyons I was going to say this, but I remember when I was leaving something and I ran into Jack and I said, thank you so much. And he said, just show me results. So finally, Jack, I get to do that today. But part of the reason that we've had the results that we've had are also these amazing partners. So Dr. Steve Underwood is here with Education Northwest. They are a technical assistance center for the U.S. Department of Education, and they're known nationally for their work in external evaluation. And that was a critical piece in the sense that we planned the evaluation from the beginning. Also, I can't thank enough HISD. You can only imagine the logistics of going into 100, and on a smiley, yes, 185 classrooms. Just the permits alone and the background checks and the technology and all the pieces and parts that went forward. They were such great collaborators. They continue to be great collaborators, and we're just so grateful for you. And then in addition is the University of Oklahoma. Lucy Troutman is here, and they have an assessment called the Early Literacy Quick Assessment so that we were able to measure and adjust as we move forward. So those are all kind of critical pieces of it. But one of the things that I think we also really, and it was as a result of our support of the donors, was we were able to really come up with a conceptual framework before we ever entered the classroom. So often in education we're accused of going fast and learning slow, but in this case we were able to learn fast to implement well, and that really did make a difference. I know we have lots of teachers here, and so often it's like, okay, we're going to do this tomorrow. And then we don't really have time to measure or adjust our practice, but we were able, with the help of our partners, to make adjustments all along the way, but we started with the end in mind, which is always a good thing. We did, in addition to evidence-based literacy instruction, which I'm just going to explain briefly, we also used what we know about systems improvement. Education was a little late. Business has been using it for a long time, but some of those things that we know go into quality, the planning, setting the focus, making sure there's a shared vocabulary, shared understanding. And Education Northwest really served as, I'll call, critical friends. They asked a lot of hard questions, but it's great to have those questions asked before you start the project. And from that, one of the things that we did with their help, which is a little bit different, is we started with something called a logic model, which is basically an if, this, then. So we started with what were the outcomes we wanted to see, and we back-mapped it. So if we want all the children to be reading or ready to read at the end of pre-K, what are those things that we need to adjust or put in from the beginning? Some of those inputs included a conceptual framework, evidence-based early literacy, and by that I mean developmentally appropriate, professional development for teachers. Pre-K is very, very challenging. I don't know, many of you may have owned a 4-year-old, and that was enough. Can you imagine having 22 of them all day? So it's a lot. Job-embedded support in the way of coaching. So Neuhaus had coaches that would go in and work with the teachers, some once a week, some once a month. Interestingly, we did not see a difference in terms of student outcomes versus once a week or once a month, and that's something for further study. Sometimes you can be so helpful that it's not help at all. If somebody shows, they're back again. And so we're seeing how much assistance is really needed. The ELPA, or the Early Literacy Quick Assessment, is assessment for learning. What it does is allow you to see which students need what information, and it does progress monitoring so you can make adjustments, and then ongoing evaluation and feedback. critically important too were those collaborations. I mean, none of us can do this on our own. So we're so grateful to HISD for allowing us to conduct this in so many classrooms, as well as the underwriting support from the Brown Foundation, the Farish Fund, and the Houston Livestock and Rodeo. So, resources and tools. One of the things that we did was give the teachers professional development and the materials they needed. So we have these units that focus on language and literacy. Everything is developmentally appropriate. We have a cute video, which you won't watch today, but you may, if you got here early, got to watch it over and over again. No worksheets. You know, that it was hands-on, students moving, fun activities. You know, you can have fun and you can learn the alphabet at the same time. Lots of manipulatives. And then something else that I think really was helpful was there was a lot of accountability built into this. Before we went into the schools, with the help of HISD, we had performance agreements with principals about here's what we're going to do, here's what the district is providing, here's what we ask you to do. And then our coaches filled out these logs. So they had virtual logs that were developed by the Education Northwest, so we could see exactly what they were coaching on. And when we saw that this was an issue in all the schools, we were able to adjust the professional development to provide that support. So with that, here are the big bar graphs, and hopefully you can see this. But what I'd like to show you is in our classrooms, all of our TMTD, which would be our sample, the students entered lower. Most of the schools in our sample had high percentages of poverty. We're going to ask Angela Sugaregg to describe her school versus some of our comparison schools. So the yellow bar graph, and I am not the mathematician, I always say that I'm the literacy person, but luckily I have a lot of stats people around me. But all of our students came in lower. At the end of the year, we were either higher or the same. And every time I say that, I still get goosebumps. What we were able to do collectively, and that I always think that heroic effect is based on a collective effort, we were able to level the playing field. So in essence, the students that were part of this first cohort, 4,000 students entered kindergarten either reading or ready to read. So pretty amazing. Thank you. Okay, so that is enough out of me. I'm going to let Cindy Purrier, who's the Director of Literacy for HISD, come and show. And if I can get it out of my pocket, Cindy, you can have it. There you go. Little.
Okay. No. Well, you know, it's a good sign when somebody says, "I'll just hold the mic," because that means they're not going to talk very long, right? So lucky you. First of all, let me say greetings to you from one of my champions of literacy, and his name is Lance Minster. He wished so much that he could be here with you today. He's our Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction for HISD. But he has asked me to come and speak to you just for just a minute or two this morning. First of all, let me say congratulations. Congratulations to Neuhaus, because here's what I know about Neuhaus. They were talking about literacy. They were talking about children who struggled with literacy. They were talking about dyslexia when nobody else was talking about it. For those of you that have known about Neuhaus for a long time, you know that's true, don't you? Now that everybody's talking about it, guess what? They're still talking about it, and they're still leading the way. So congratulations to Neuhaus. I appreciate you and your partnership with us so much. I think I have to say congratulations to the coaches. Congratulations to you. Absolutely, absolutely. The way you have been able to go in and be change agents in the classrooms of our youngest readers is absolutely incredible to me, and my heartfelt thanks goes to you. And just all I can say is keep up the good work. And then I think what I have to say too is congratulations, 4-year-olds. Congratulations that you are going to be going into kindergarten ready to read. That's a life changer. That is huge. That is huge. On my way over here, I was listening to the radio and I was hearing somebody that was talking about how they had invented a new golf club that was going to change the lives of golfers. And I say, awesome, that is great. But what about changing the life of a reader? Now that's where I want to put my money. So thank you, and congratulations, you darling 4-year-olds out there. Teachers make a difference. I'm one of those. And I want to make a difference. And if I don't make a difference, I don't want to do it anymore. So teachers do make a difference, but this is, I think, what I know. It's not just teachers that make a difference. It's teachers who are experts at what they do. It's teachers that, alongside other people, have been coached and mentored. It's teachers who are given good knowledge that then they can practice and they can perfect in their classrooms. Kind of sounds like this study a little bit. So once again, I just say thank you to Neuhaus for letting us be partners in your good work. Mary Beth is very gracious to say thank you, HISD, for being partners with us. Well, I want to say right back to you, no, we are the ones that want to say thank you. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you're doing. Please, please, please keep it up. And if there's anything at all that I can do, I work at Hattie Mae White, and I'll even tell you my address. It's 2 Southwest 19. It's a little bitty office with no window, but it is an office. It's not a cubicle. So come by anytime. I would love to sit and talk to you about literacy and the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Next, I'd like to introduce Angela Sugaregg, who is the principal at Durham Elementary, and she was so kind to let us come in there, film, observe, all those wonderful things. She's such wonderful teachers.
Thank you. As she said, I'm the principal at Durham Elementary. Durham is a relatively small school in North Houston. We have 550 students. We are 75% free and reduced lunch. However, in our pre-K program, we are 95% free and reduced lunch. We have 5% of our kids who are tuition-based. For us, this has been a fantastic opportunity. Our teachers have received amazing professional development and spot-on feedback on their instruction. In talking to one of my veteran teachers who's actually in the video about her experience with this, she said, when I walked out of the first training, I thought to myself, how did I ever teach reading before this? And that's powerful. Because there's lots of professional development. Google professional development. You'll be amazed. There's a million people providing it. Lots of people provide feedback. Principals all across Houston are probably writing feedback right now for teachers. But to be able to provide professional development and feedback that actually changes the way a teacher thinks, to change their mindset, that's powerful. And to be able to change what teachers think about teaching and learning and what they believe about their students, that is exactly what happened at Durham thanks to this program. In looking at our data, it very much mirrors this. However, we had a small percentage of students who were the blue bar. And our 95% of students who are in free reduced lunch actually caught up. When we looked at our data from last year, we found that over half of our pre-K students were entering kinder actually reading. Not ready to read, reading. That's huge, amazing. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be part of this. It really changed the landscape for our students at Durham, and it changed things for the future because now those teachers think differently. They will take those skills forward, and every year they will touch 22 new students with those skills. So thank you to Neuhaus for letting us participate. We are so grateful for all of the work that we were able to do as part of this initiative with Neuhaus.
We have one last. Mr. Lyons, would you come up and say a few words with us? Thank you so much. Jack Lyons. Oh, we dropped our little thing, our fuzzy thing. That's a technical term, too, the fuzzy thing. Maybe I'll turn it off. Fuzzy thing doesn't want to go back on. All the teachers know the words to fuzzy bear, right? Okay. Here we go.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you for having us here today, and this is an exciting time for us. I don't think I was that abrupt about just show me results. Is that the challenge that we all find in the educational field is how do you show your return on your investment? And you know, we're very proud of our legacy at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and we're going to continue to uphold promoting agriculture and supporting education. And one of the biggest things that we always have a challenge with, and what we really, when we sit in our meeting of our Educational Contributions Committee, we talk about the literacy issues that we are faced in this country, in this great state that we live in. And so we're very happy to continue to support what the Neuhaus Foundation does, and we will continue to do so as long as I have a say or have a vote on the executive committee, because it's been something that obviously you've shown some fantastic results, and I congratulate you for that. And thank you for having us here today. And I'd like to introduce our president and CEO. And would you like to say a few words? This is Joel Cowley, and he's our president and CEO.
Thank you, Jack, and it's a pleasure to be here. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is truly an international event, drawing people from all over the world really to come in and see the livestock show, and certainly all over the country and from throughout Texas. And our educational programs reach throughout Texas, whether that be the scholarships that are awarded, over 750 of them, to Texas youth each year, or it's the support that we provide to our livestock exhibitors who come from all over Texas, because there's certainly an education involved in raising an animal. There's an education involved in competing in one of our contests that allows you to develop public speaking skills and decision-making skills. And so we reach throughout the state of Texas, but it is particularly rewarding when we give back to the local area, because we owe our success to Houston, whether that be our 31,000 volunteers in this area who support our show and make all this possible, or our general attendance. We know most of them come from the metro area. And so when we're able to support programs such as this that give back to the community and make the Houston metro area a better place, it is particularly rewarding. So congratulations, 4-year-olds, congratulations, teachers, and congratulations, Neuhaus.
Let's see if I can do this correctly. So we're going to do a Q&A after we do just a quick donor appreciation, but I am the research consumer, and I do just 2 things that I want to make sure that is known. But one is the value of teachers. Research shows that a teacher is 20 times more impactful than any other intervention, over and over again. And so I think that that's a big piece of why we call this Teachers Make the Difference. And then the other thing is that importance of early reading success. We spend so much money on intervention and remediation, but we know if a child reads on grade level, by the time they're in 3rd grade, their chances of, or if they don't read on grade level, I should say, their chances are 1 in 8 that they will ever read on grade level. And actually, the research is pretty clear that that's true at the end of 1st grade. So no time is as critical or as fleeting as those first few years in school. And for our children living in poverty, we have so much to catch up for. So it's wonderful for a playing field. But with that, we will do some Q&A, but not without us. You know, we owe our success to Houston, too. And Houston is the most philanthropic city in America. Neuhaus couldn't exist anyplace else. So I'd ask the folks from the Katie Hayes from the Brown Foundation, Joan Sean from Williams Dance Parish, and our 2 wonderful rodeo representatives to come here so we can give you, in education, it's all about the plaque, right? You got to get the plaque. Actually, teachers, it's usually a coffee mug, so it's a big thing, right? Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you so much, Joan. Thanks so much for coming today. And this would not have happened without their support. So educators, could you help me thank them? Okay, great.
I had not prepared any comments, so I just want to say a couple of things. The first is I have worked with young children myself, and there are many times when you can tell by dealing with the children how bright they are. And yet there are those that have not been able to make progress because of learning differences. And my hat is off really to, I guess, originally Lennox Reed and Betty Neuhaus, who were so convinced that was the case that they searched the United States to find the answer and to bring the answer to Houston. And now we all benefit from it, and it's continuing to grow. And the number of adults I know now, maybe into their 40s, who have benefited from the program is enormous. So now their children have benefited, and now their grandchildren are benefiting. And the whole community is now serving as an example for the state and other parts of the country. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I'm here representing the Brown Foundation, and all I will say is that the Foundation's #1 priority is education, understanding how that is the foundation for really everything that happens in our world. So we are very, very grateful to teachers and appreciate you, and are really happy to be part of the program.
Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm turning to Julie, who's she's actually really the boss. Are we Q&A? Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure I was staying on track. Does anybody have any questions about the project or methodology? No? Yeah, it's scary. There is actually 155-page support, so those of you that are taking basic language skills, you need to have that read, and you'll have a quiz next time. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. I'll tell you what, if there aren't any questions, we'll break. If you have any questions of us or Dr. Underwood, Lucy Troutman, or anybody, we'll be here. But, oh, yes, I'm sorry.
How big was the sample?
It included 185 classrooms in the Houston area. 104 of those were treatment schools, and the rest was a comparison. So it was a quasi-experimental design, so that we were very careful to control it. And actually, that took a lot of work from the school district, so we appreciate it. So often in education, if it's a good idea, we do it to everybody, and then we realize it didn't work, and oh, sorry, right? So yeah, it was a great idea. Anything else? Yes? Where do we go from here? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So it is being replicated. That was the first cohort with things we learned. It's being implemented again this year in Houston Independent School District, as well as we're doing some work with the Archdiocese of Galveston and Houston, as well as Yellowstone Academy. What we really want to see is now, does the model work? Can we replicate it in other places? As well as what we would love to do, and I know Lucy and I have talked about that a lot, is we'd love to do some longitudinal. So we know where they exited pre-K. What we'd love to do is see what do they look like in kindergarten in terms of readiness, end of kindergarten, end of first grade, and so on.
What kind of follow-through is there in the following grade for those pre-K students, kindergarten students?
One of the things that I think was unique was part of the professional development is for the kindergarten teachers to come for a day with their peers who teach pre-K, so that the teachers could almost present, get to know, here are your students. Thinking we have the principal here from Gabriella Mistral, and we've had talks about that. That's a wonderful early childhood center that then serves 13 different elementary schools. Is that correct? Feeder pattern. And so how do those kindergarten teachers know that this child is reading? Because there's more variance in kindergarten than any other grade. And so you have those kids who come in reading, and you have those other kids who have never seen a book. And so it's really helpful if the teachers know ahead of time so they can differentiate their instruction. So part of the model is actually working with kindergarten teachers, and our hope is to work with so that they have an understanding, and our hope is to be able to follow that with first grade and beyond.
Mary Beth, what is the methodology in a nutshell?
Why don't we ask Dr. Underwood to explain it? This is why, this is why I make a lot of friends. Steve?
I'll apologize in advance for the scratchy frog in my throat. I actually didn't have a voice 2 days ago. so I'm recovering. The methodology was we had 3 groups, as Mary Beth described. There was 2 groups got the treatment, and the treatment included professional development plus coaching. The difference between the 2 groups in the treatment was that the coaching intensity was different. There was a high-intensity coaching and a low-intensity coaching. And then the comparison group got nothing, so to speak. And then in terms of the statistical analysis that we used something called a difference in differences statistical analysis that essentially looks at the comparison between the groups in terms of expected growth. So based on how everybody did together, what would we expect the treatment group's growth to be in comparison with the control group? And then if there are any differences in that, how much more or less growth did they experience? And so in the full report, there's another table like this that shows this chart in essence with some additional growth there that, again, shows the difference between what was expected versus what was actual. Yeah. Is that a question for me? Okay. All right. Very good.
Was it only done with the ELL class or the bilingual class also?
No, this was just for the traditional classes, not the English language learner classes and not special ed. We wanted to make sure we focused on the general population in terms of the breadth and depth of the program. So yes.
But we did have bilingual classrooms that were part of the sample, but the assessment was in English.
Right, and in terms of the actual statistical analysis, the statistical analysis was only done on the general population classes, not on the classes that were solely bilingual or solely special education. Yeah. Were there any other questions for the? Okay, I'll pass it back to Mary Beth. Make sure to hand you the right thing.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Cindy.
I'm really intrigued by the outcome of that you really saw no significant difference between coaching once a week and coaching once a month. Mainly because my mind is racing about the implications of that in other things that I'm involved in. So are you going to make a change as far as how often teachers work with a coach based on that research, or are you going to continue with those?
No, we have changed. So the question was, she was surprised by the outcome, as were we. One of the things in research is you're supposed to never look at the data. You're never supposed to, right? Dr. Good, never eyeball the data. Of course we did. And even our coaches were sure that the teachers who had gotten once a week coaching, their students were going to have better outcomes. We saw no difference between the teachers who had coaching once a week versus once a month. Now, part of that was, though, fidelity, and that's a big word in education, is some of the teachers who were supposed to get coaching once a week didn't get it once a week. So when we looked at it, and that could be they had an assembly, there was something going on, but they didn't get the full treatment. But based on that, because that model of having somebody go into a classroom is very expensive, so we think it has great implications for further study from a school district perspective, because that can be a very expensive resource. And this year, the teachers are getting coaching twice a month. So we're going to see, are we seeing, and we're trying to play with each of the parts to see what's the most efficient in terms of return on investment. What are those things that are absolutely critical variables you need to maintain with fidelity, and what are some of those things? Because in the real world of school budgets and things like that, to have an expert come into a classroom is quite costly, and that means that they're not in a classroom teaching. So, is there another question? Yes.
I have a methodology question. So how your outcomes that you were shooting for, how closely aligned were they to the HISD curriculum? Meaning, like, were the teachers in the control classroom and the teachers in the intervention classrooms, were they shooting for the same outcomes with the only difference being the Neuhaus curriculum? Or did the control teachers even know what outcomes they were shooting for? You know, sometimes you take your child to the pediatrician, they ask you all these questions about their development, and you're like, I don't even know that I was supposed to be looking for that. You know what I mean? And so was it just the methodology that was different, or?
No, I think that and I shouldn't speak for HISD, but HISD, I have a lot of early childhood folks, has done a lot of work in terms of expected outcomes for pre-K standards and all of that. So I would say that the teachers, if they weren't aware, my goodness, it wasn't that they weren't told. So I think the expectations were the same in terms of readiness, and there was an additional assessment going on that the district was doing at the same time as we were doing ELQA. We picked a different assessment for our group just to see, but the district was also gathering data the whole time. So, and I will say this, and Steve talked about this is phenomenal because given the 95% poverty rate, which is not, poverty is the biggest risk factor for literacy, we would not have expected to match, much less exceed in some of those areas. So it shows the intensity of support. Anything else?
Something to add to that, Mary Beth, is yes, sorry. Something to add to that is that the district curriculum, Frog Street, last year was it had very similar expected outcomes to what Neuhaus was working on. So things like print concepts and rhyming and letter naming and these other kind of letter sound ideas. And the way that we looked at the study, some of the qualitative evaluation that we did was about how Neuhaus was not a replacement program. They intentionally came in as a way to teach the teachers how to use strategies to get at the same types of concepts. And so a lot of what we saw was that the teachers in the program used the Neuhaus materials, but it was a supplemental thing. So essentially the teachers in both groups were doing the same types of things, but the Neuhaus teachers probably were better equipped with the strategies that they needed to actually achieve them.
I think that's true. Well, all right, in the essence of time, so if you know Neuhaus, we like to start on time and end on time, so we're going to close this, but we will be here for questions, and if you've never had Neuhaus coffee cake, you're missing something, so the coffee and snacks are right there. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We really appreciate it.